Um, so this is a brief discussion about what a school psychologist is and information about training. All right, so in this first thing, it just says, what's a school psychologist? Well, school psychology is one of the, what is this, 60 some odd fields of the area of psychology, according to the American Psychological Association. There are a tremendous number of them. We're Division 16. Just of note, though, there are only 4 of all of those divisions that result in a license to practice. The rest of them are all theory-based or research-based areas. We are what most programs are going to be what you call scientist practitioner based, which means that we both do theory and research, but we also work with clients. So the 4 areas are school, clinical, counseling, and IO. Industrial organizational psychology is, it's usually out of a business school. They make a lot more money than all the rest of us. And they focus on working in with businesses and doing things like finding out that red makes you hungry. And so you paint all the restaurants red, that kind of thing, but also helping determine which groups of individuals work best together and how to motivate people in a business setting. So really, and not every state will license an IO psychologist, but all states will license school, clinical, and counseling. All right. School psychology is the only field with a license or certification at a subdoctoral level. And that means that unlike counseling and clinical and IO, you don't have to have a doctoral degree to be a school psychologist. Um, though a lot of people do get the doctoral degree. So with this in mind, right now APA is looking to build, and this may change in the future, um, subdoctoral licenses for clinical and counseling. But as of today, which is 2025, this has not been accomplished yet. So what are the differences, practical differences for folks that are in the EDS, which is what we usually call it. Some folks call it a master's plus 30. Some places call it a CAS degree. But that is the subdoctoral degree, which I'm going to call an ed specialist, and the PhD in terms of practicality. Well, the EDS can work in schools. And for the most part, that's the only setting they can work in. Some states will allow school psychologists to do some levels of private practice. Um, so like Florida has a school psych license. I think California has like an educational psychologist license, um, and psych associates and things like that, various places. But for the most part, the EDS degree pretty much limits your work within the schools. So, and the group that oversees us is the National Association of School Psychologists. They work with both the doctoral and the EDS level. If you are looking for a training program at the EDS level, you absolutely want it to be NASP accredited. Must consider that. If you go to the NASP website, nasponline.org, they do provide a list of programs throughout the country, and then they will tell you if they are NASP accredited or not. The certification for you and a test tend to be a certification and not a license, usually comes from the Department of Education in most states. It's the same folks, you're licensed or certified under the same folks that license and certify teachers. The pathway to get there usually consists of 2 years of coursework and practicum, and then 1 year of internship in the schools. Internship can be pretty much anywhere that there is a practicing school psychologist who has been credentialed for at least 3 years, and that you have the opportunity to do the kind of things that school psychologists do. And so that leaves a lot of flexibility. At the completion of the 2 years of coursework and a year of internship, you would take the praxis, or you're required to take the praxis. Some states have their individual state exam. Praxis has about an 88% to 95% pass rate. And with that, if you're on an ASPA approved program, you complete all the requirements and you pass the praxis, you're pretty much done. Like most states, they might have an extra jurisprudence exam, making sure you know the laws of the state, but that's pretty much it. Compare that to a PhD program. You can work anywhere that a psychologist works. So as a person with a PhD in school psych, I've worked in private practice, I've worked in hospitals, I've worked in prisons, I've done forensics work in multiple settings, including sanity and competence in the courts, and working with foster care and forensic work in that capacity. And I've worked at the VA, providing family options, pretty much anywhere I ever wanted to be, I could be. This license, for the most part, comes from the Department of Health or the Board of Psychological Examiners. It is a license. All of the 4 license eligible areas, clinical, counseling, school, and IO, they all pretty much have the same pathway to coursework. It tends to be about 4 years of coursework and practicum, a year of internship. That year of internship, if you are in an APA approved program and you want to be in an APA approved program, makes getting licensed so much easier. If you're in an APA approved program, you're pretty much going to be required to get an APA approved internship. We would look into those at a place called APPIC, that's APIC. And there are not a ton of APA and APIC approved internships. They exist. All of our students this past year and the year before matched with no problems. But they're just in different places. So for instance, the state of Nevada has no APA approved internships. So all of our students, for them to do an APA approved internship, have to leave the state of Nevada. And that is not uncommon. Most students, like I got my doctorate from Texas, and I had to do my internship in Memphis. Even following all of that, you finish, you graduate, you still have most states, there's about 3 or 4 states that don't require it, but most states also require a year of supervised postdoc, and you have to take a test called the EPPP, which is a nationwide license exam. It has like a 70% pass rate and on the first attempt. And then with that, most states also have a jurisprudence exam, which says, I know the laws of the state. And only then would you be eligible for licensure. And that's pretty true across the board. So now, one of the big differences, though, is that school psychologists with doctoral degrees can work in the schools in every other setting, whereas folks with doctorates in clinical or counseling or IO can work anywhere but schools. So we have more options. I like to say if you want to work with kids, you want to be able to work with them, their families, but also where they work. So keep going. What does a school psychologist in the schools do? And this is usually pretty true for folks that have an EDS degree or a doctorate working in the schools. This tends to be our area. I like to say that we're the bridge between general education and special education. So kids are having problems, teacher comes to you and says, hey, this kid is really struggling. I don't know what to do. And we provide consultation. We go and identify research-based interventions. We help the kid in the gen ed classroom and the teacher. We look at a systems level. So we help the families, we help the child, we help the school. And if that doesn't work, then they'll be referred for a special education evaluation, and we do testing and diagnostics. And then if the child is placed in special ed, we help with program planning and writing IEPs. If the kid has pretty significant social, emotional, behavioral issues, we may provide counseling as a related service. Now, in addition to these things, at the gen ed level, we often are part of any kind of crisis response team. And then in the special ed and gen ed, we help with program evaluations. How are things going for this particular teacher, this classroom, this research-based intervention? So that's the nature of our job. We are very systems focused. Yes, we do work one-on-one with individual children, but so much of where we see, we're not trying to go in and say, the child is the problem. We look at the system in which the child is embedded and see what we can do to help everyone in the system. And only then do we start looking at the child as the problem. So what are the areas that we study? Well, this is it. I'm not going to go into all of them. Go to the NAS website, but this shows the things and areas that you train in and to become a school psychologist. A lot of it is related to database decision making, which includes assessment, consultation, collaboration, interventions for academics, interventions for behavior and social, safe schools, working with families. Diversity and social justice are a huge part of the school psychology mindset. And then, of course, research and professional work. So here's an example of what this might look like in a multi-tailored system of support. So like we might, as a school psychologist, we might work with every single kid at the tier 1 level, identify empirically based interventions, help provide screenings for kids that are more at risk, help provide progress monitoring and setting up and identifying and working with teachers or other specialists to set up interventions, then analyze data and determine if a child needs really either more specialized things like special ed or individual counseling or individual one-on-one work academically. And so we work at each one of these levels providing consultation and data collection and decision making. So for example, we have an entire 5th grade hall that has some fighting going on. So then we're going to look into seeing what's going on in 5th grade and working and finding programs that fit everyone. And then we're going to need to set up a screening mechanism to determine which one of the kids or which groups of kids need more support. And then we find that in this particular example, the biggest issue is not all of 5th graders, but it's Mrs. Jones' 5th grade class. So then we will identify the folks in Mrs. Jones' 5th grade class who need maybe small group support, maybe some sort of empathy training or social skills or things like that. We monitor how they're doing. And then we really, even with all that, we see improvements across the board, but it's really just Crystal. Like Crystal is fighting and she is not responding to any of the other intervention work, at which point we decide and work together to decide that Crystal needs more directed intervention support. And part of that data collection to determine exactly what kind of support she would have would be an assessment. So part of the assessment, we're going to collect all kinds of data, records. So our records show you that Crystal has had no academic issues, kindergarten through 4th grade, or behavioral issues. It's all started in 5th grade. And not really any vision, hearing, medical issues. She is a white female who's on free and reduced lunch, so there's some socioeconomic stuff. And we tried with tier 1 and tier 2, and even some with tier 3, there was some response, but it really, she's not doing well. So then we look at the interview data. The mom says that Crystal doesn't have any friends and she's had a long history of impulsivity. The teacher says that Crystal has no friends and that the child is unorganized. And the child tells you that they have no friends and that the other kids make fun of them. We look at observation data that, looking at the child, they're wearing mismatched items and the socks don't match the clothes and the clothes are really unfashionable. So she's not really working to, she's putting on whatever's around. She's not really looking to fit in. In the hallway, she wanders aimlessly, and she avoids the other kids unless somebody's cornered her. And in class, she's preferring to sit in the back. Her desk is messy, and the teacher pretty much has to stand over her to redirect her work. We give IQ tests, and if her IQ is average. Her academics are pretty average except for writing. She has pretty high social anxiety and impulsivity, but her oppositional behavior is pretty average. So what are our hypotheses? Does the child maybe have anxiety or ADHD, writing disability, maybe even autism? The decisions, does the child need special ed services? Do we want to continue them in tier 3 or tier 2? What happens? What are our concerns about the transition for the child between elementary and middle school? And so off of this, we're going to conduct assessments and meet with more individuals and really try and focus on what is either broken in the system for the child or how we can put supports in place. So that's what school psychs do. So other things about school psychs is that we make more money than clinical and counseling. We also can work more places than clinical and counseling, which I think I've said those two before. And then at this point, this opens up for any questions. So hopefully this has given you some guidance about what we do, who we are, as well as the kind of training and benefits. I will say the turnover rate for school psychologists is really, really low. We tend to really like what we do. We have great work environments, and our lives are pretty good for work-life balance. So feel free, you have my information here, to contact me if you have any other questions. All right, so that's the spiel. And now in the future, no one else will have
All right,
to
sorry.
do it, as boring as it is, but hopefully give some information about who we are. So the UNLV program is both NASP approved at the EDS level and APA approved at the doctoral level.
Perfect. Yeah, I saw that it's the only one in Nevada, which is really cool.
Well, there is an EDS level school psychology program at Nevada State, which is in Henderson. It's new. It's only been around about 2 or 3 years. It is not NASP approved, but it is designed for working teachers. We are not designed for working teachers. And that's because of our practicum. For the most part, our courses are in like 4 o'clock and 7 o'clock, but our practicum, you have to be in the schools. And so you have to be in the schools when schools are in session, which means it's not really a good fit for folks that are trying to maintain staying in the schools.
Yeah. And when does the practicum start?
It starts from the very first semester.
From the beginning.
So the first semester you'll do, so students do a once a week practicum that they are expected, it's either 4 or 8 hours. Once a week they go into the schools. A lot of it is shadowing. A lot of it is, helping with whatever's going on, maybe some social skills training, things like that. And so you do that. We call that the first year practicum. That's, every week, fall and spring semester. It's not summer because the kids aren't there. And then in the second year, you do intermediate practicum, which is done in our in-house clinic called the practice, capital P, capital R, like it stands for something. And the practice will give you cases. So it's really an assessment focused practice experience, but there's also some work out in schools that you do with consultation and things like that. And then your third year at the EDS level is in the schools full time. It is usually paid, and how much it's paid depends on you and the district. So for instance, right now, CCSD is paying, what are they paying? It's like 25 or 30 grand a year. It's not great. But like Elko County is paying 75.
Wow.
The starting salary for a school psychologist in CCSD is $90,000 a year for a 190-day work year. So it's pretty good. And that's pretty true across places. Like school psychs tend to make really good money. But yeah, no, it starts right away. And again, the Nevada State program was targeted specifically for CCSD teachers to recruit them to get into school psych, but they are not accredited. They're accredited at the state level, but not at the national level.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be able to like go work in a different state, for example.
Well, you might. It just makes it harder for you to get what's called your NCSP, which is your National Certification in School Psychology. NASP provides that. You have to do a case study. Hopefully, they are already doing them with you. And like, yeah, they have to go through your syllabus. You have to keep all your syllabi and your program of study. My understanding is that that program is designed for you to be able to put all that documentation forward and possibly get it. I just say possibly because I don't know. It's not my program. The person to talk to over there would be Katie Dockweiler. She is a doctoral graduate from our program at UNLV, and we think very highly of Katie. But the reason I'm so hesitant to say is that at the national level, it's like 14%, I think, of students that graduate from a non-NASP approved program
Yeah.
can get their NCSP. So the NCSP automatically, and like 36 states will take the NCSP and you have to do nothing else in order to get hired or get your certification there. That is not to say, though, that if you don't get your NCSP and you graduate from Nevada State, that they won't, like other states won't take you. They're just going to require you to jump through. The reciprocity is not as easy. You may have to go back and take extra tests or an extra course here or two. For instance, I think in Florida, you have to make sure that if you don't have a reading interventions course, you have to take a readings intervention course if you don't graduate from an NASP approved program and you don't have it in your transcript at a graduate level. So it really depends on where you're going. There's such a nationwide shortage. It's a huge shortage. It's like, at least in Florida, I used to be in Florida. At least in Florida, 1 in 5 positions are getting filled and haven't been filled for years.
Wow.
So, yeah, no, we've got about 15, 20,000 unfilled school psych positions nationwide, which is it's one of the reasons we make more than clinical and counseling is because there's just way too few of us. And unlike school social workers, and school counselors, we are federally mandated positions. Like schools have to have us. It's not, oh, we're not a luxury. Like we're required because of child find for kids with disabilities. So, um, so that means we also have job security at a level that other school-based fields do not.
What is, because I was seeing, so you have applications are for like, it's like once a year, right? So you would start
Yeah.
in the fall following year of whenever you apply.
So if you apply for the doctoral program, I think the application deadline is like December 1st. Always check our website. But I believe it's December 1st. And if you apply for the EDS program, I think it's in January. And yes, we do not have rolling admissions. It's like if you apply, so the earliest you could possibly start the program would be August 2026. And we have you guys go through in cohorts. And one of the reasons we do that is we only accept between 12 and 15 students a year. And that's because NASP keeps us like we can't take more than that. We'd have to hire more faculty in order to take more students. And anyway, so with 12 to 15 students a year, that's just enough. It's a little bit more needed to make a single class. Well, a lot of our classes we only offer once a year, and a lot of our classes are prerequisites to other classes. So for instance, you have to take the IQ class in the fall in order to meet the prerequisite for the achievement class in the spring. And then you have to have those two classes to do the intermediate practicum in the next fall. And they're only offered once a year. And if you miss them, you have to sit out for you. So like we just, and this is pretty universal across all school psych programs, we just don't allow it. You pretty much have to everybody starts together. Those other 12 people with you are going to be like your whole life. You all become very immersed with one another and, your best friends, your worst enemies kind of situation. And I still stay in contact with folks that where I got my EDS. Like a couple of them we still write or hang out at conferences and things. I can't hear you.
Oh, you can't hear me? Sorry. Can
Oh,
you
I
hear me?
can hear you now. I can hear you now.
I said, yeah, I can imagine you stay close with them forever.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
what does what is like acceptance like? Like, is it a lower acceptance rate? Is it?
So it is easier to get into a school psych doctoral program by far than it is to get into clinical and counseling. And mostly it's because folks just don't know that we exist. Like it's also easier to get into an IO program than it is, even though they make a lot more money. Their starting salary is like 180, you
Wow.
know. So and that's at the doctoral level, but most people just don't even like they'll get their psych undergrad and they don't even know that we exist because they themselves didn't have disabilities and they weren't have problems in the schools and so they didn't work with us. They might have worked with a school counselor, but they wouldn't have worked with us. And we just are completely overseen. So that being said, I think we took two or three, and usually programs will take one doctoral student per faculty member who's working with doctoral students. So we have 5 faculty members, but only 3 of us work with doctoral students. And so I think we took 2 this year, 2 doctoral students, and we had 60 applications. And and that's good because compared to say clinical or counseling, in those same doctoral positions, they'll have 2 or 3 slots with like 200 or 300 applications. So shifting gears to the EDS, I think we ended up we had a really big group this year. I think we took like 16 because we hired new faculty. And I think we had like 85 applicants. So, but once you take the applicants that don't meet our minimum requirements for GPA, I think we had like 70 that were viable. So it's competitive, but
Yeah.
it's not where near as competitive as, say, a doctoral degree in clinical or counseling.
Yeah, because I saw that. I think the minimum requirement for GPA was a 3.0.
I think it's higher than that. I think it's like 3.2, but I'd have to look. I haven't looked in a while. It's whatever's on the website. I will believe you. I, I was a faculty member here in 05 to 09. And then I moved and I was a faculty member at Florida State University. And I recently came back here. So it's only been about a year and a half that I've been back. So that's why I'm like, I don't know, look at the website. Like I'm still, having to check things out.
Perfect. Yeah, I think that's
You see why I want to give that little spiel? Like I
yeah,
can just say, go to my website, watch this, and then I can meet with you. And it would take a lot because it answers so many questions.
it does. Yeah, so many questions. I think also because I work in CCSD too. I work with school psychs, and that's how I was even introduced to it. I didn't even know that that was a thing until I started doing special ed. But there's
Yeah.
because I have a special education degree from UNLV. There's no prerequisites that I would need to fulfill. Correct. I could just apply directly into
Mhm.
the EDS program.
Absolutely. When I was and that's true pretty much everywhere. When I was at Florida State, we took somebody who had their undergraduate from the Beijing Film Academy. Like what we want to see more than anything in your application, A, we want to see that you meet our minimum requirements. But B, we want to see that you have any history of working with kids or individuals with disabilities. So your background in special ed is a huge bonus for you. We also like to see work with mental health. So maybe volunteering for suicide hotlines or, or you could even discuss, the work that you've done to provide social skills or behavior management or whatever it is with the kids that you've been working in schools. Those are the things you want to emphasize in your cover letter. Um, to us is going to be those very things. And we're going to want, so I'm thinking about what we evaluate you on, make sure that it's grammatically correct, et cetera. But we want to see those experiences. We also want to see that you've worked with a diverse population of kids, if possible, like you're, as a social justice focus. But finally, we want to know which aspects of the job really excite you. So that's one of the reasons I kind of went into like all the things that are on the bridge and, is it consultation or is it assessment? Is it crisis or suicide? Like, what is it that you would want to see? That's even more important if you apply at the doctoral level. At the doctoral level, you need to really have an idea of the research that you want to do. And one of the three of us, or wherever you go, but one of the three of us, you would want to say, I like the research done by Kathleen Kroc because she does research on um, computer-based assessment and multilingual assessment. So that's going to, because then we can say, oh, she's doing exactly what I'm doing. And that's great. We should bring her into my research team. But if you told me I'm really interested in doing like autism, well, anything other than assessment. So autism interventions, I'm going to be like, that's not me, right? It's not that, I could do it, but that's not my research focus. At the EDS level, we don't care about your research. We want to know that you're going, because it's much more practitioner based and more global. It's going to be like, these are all the things that you need to know how to do. So that's my big recommendation. My other recommendation is talk to Katie and find out. She would be able to answer to you, Katie Dockweiler. She'd be able to answer to you exactly what you want to know about the transportability of their program and their degree to other states. My recommendation, if you choose that path, then get your NCSP as soon as you can. It's so much harder to do that later.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This was so helpful. I feel like I've gained so much more information than I even, because I read, I think, the UNLV website like over so many times, but this was very helpful and I appreciate your time.
Well, and if you need to meet with me at any point again in the future, just let me know. We'll schedule a time.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.